AITA for holding my dad's retirement hostage after he called me just a cashier. I, 28, have been put down by my family for as long as I can remember. My parents never tried to hide that they had a favorite child, and it wasn't me. Growing up, it was always, Elise got straight A's again, and Elise was accepted into the honors program, while my report cards barely got a glance. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't a bad student. A solid B student with a few A's here and there, but I wasn't the academic genius my sister was. I was more of a hands-on person. While Elise was memorizing biology textbooks, I was the kid taking apart old computers to rebuild them or helping our neighbor fix his deck to earn a little cash. My father, Jonathan, was obsessed with status and appearances. He worked as a middle manager at a corporation, always talking about that promotion that never seemed to come. The guy literally had a whole collection of motivational posters in his home office with things like perseverance and excellence. Ironic, since he'd been stuck in the same position for a decade. My mother was a high school teacher who spent most of her time bragging about her gifted daughter to her colleagues. Meanwhile, I was the kid who got a simple, "That's nice, honey," when I won the school's woodworking competition. Not even a real congratulations, just a half-hearted acknowledgement before they went back to talking about Elise's latest academic achievement. When it was time for college, Elise got into a prestigious private university with a partial scholarship. My parents took out loans, emptied their savings, and did whatever it took to send her there. They even refinanced the house, which I only found out about years later. When it was my turn 2 years later, the conversation was simply, the community college offers some great programs, and you can work to pay for it yourself. Message received loud and clear. The day Elise officially got the title doctor before her name, she walked into our parents' house waving her diploma and a job offer from a prestigious hospital. From that exact moment, I practically ceased to exist for them, except as a target. I still remember the family dinner where my father told me directly, "She's a doctor, she saves lives, and you? You just skin items at Target." I looked at him, thinking, who says that to their own son? But he didn't stop there. He leaned back in his chair, smirked, and said, "Honestly, Marshall, if it weren't for Elise, we wouldn't have anyone to be proud of. At least one of our kids is worth something." He didn't even hesitate. He just kept eating as if he hadn't just called his own son useless. My mother laughed so hard she had to wipe her eyes. Then she added, "Don't be so dramatic. He just means we can't exactly brag about someone who stocks shelves." Elise didn't even try to stop them. She seemed to enjoy the show. She sat there with that smug little smile, sipping her sparkling water as if she were above it all. I just kept thinking about how I'd fixed her laptop for free the week before after she'd spilled coffee on it. Funny how my useless skills suddenly became useful when she needed them. After that, putting me down became their favorite pastime. Every holiday, every birthday, every Sunday dinner, it didn't matter. If I mentioned my job or what I was doing, my parents would roll their eyes. My mom would say things like, "Maybe one day you'll do something that matters," and my dad would just sigh and shake his head. The worst part was, my parents had a framed wall in the hallway they called the Family Achievement Wall. It had about 20 pictures of Elise, her medical school graduation, her first white coat, her posing with some important doctor, and literally one picture of me. It was my high school graduation photo, and I'm pretty sure they only put it up because my grandparents called them out for not having any pictures of me at all. Elise got worse over time. Making minimum wage, she'd say in front of the whole family, "Put that on your name tag." When she bought her BMW, my parents couldn't stop talking about it, constantly asking me when I was going to ditch my old car. I drive a 2009 Civic that runs perfectly fine. When she bought her condo, they asked me when I was going to stop living like a poor college student. When she went on vacation to Europe, they'd remind me that people with real careers get to travel. For Christmas one year, my dad literally gave me a book titled From Mediocrity to Success, Finding Your Voice, as a gift in front of everyone. My uncle almost choked on his eggnog. I tried different approaches. I stayed silent. I defended myself. I avoided visits. Nothing changed. The second I walked through their door, I was their favorite target again. The only people who ever stood up for me were my grandparents. My grandfather, Clarence, once told my father to back off after a particularly cruel comment, saying, "That boy works harder than you think, Jonathan." My father just snickered and said, "We're only joking." My grandmother, Dorothy, would always pull me aside to tell me she was proud of me no matter what, but it didn't change the overall dynamic. Besides, my grandfather was the only one who truly understood me. He was a carpenter his whole life, building things with his hands, just like me. He always said, "Some build with their minds, others with their hands. Both build the world we live in." He gave me my first toolbox when I was 12 and taught me how to fix things instead of replacing them. Those skills turned out to be far more valuable than anyone in my family ever imagined. Elise remained the golden child. I was the disappointment they hoped would finally grow up. What none of them knew was that I was building something in secret. 3 years ago, I managed to save enough for a down payment on a rundown duplex. I renovated it myself on weekends, rented out both units, used that income to finance another property, and then another. I never told them. What was the point? They would have found a way to make it about Elise. The only person who knew the real me was my girlfriend, Bianca. She's my biggest supporter, quiet, incredibly smart, and able to see through people's lies and hypocrisy. I never introduced her to my family. I knew exactly what they'd say about a girl who works at a bookstore. My mom would probably ask her when she planned on getting a real job or make a comment about how Elise once dated a neurosurgeon. But Bianca was my rock through it all. She knows everything, sees everything, and has never once asked me to prove anything to her. One night, after a particularly brutal family dinner where my dad suggested I should shadow Elise at the hospital to see what real work looks like, Bianca helped me realize something important. "You know why your parents' approval means so much to your sister?" she asked. "Because she has nothing else. No real friends, no hobbies, no life outside of being the successful daughter. You have a whole life they know nothing about. That's your power." She was right, and that power was about to become very, very real. About 2 years into Elise's reign as family royalty, small cracks started to appear. At first, it was little things, canceled visits, shorter calls with my parents. Then, at Thanksgiving dinner, she mentioned that her husband, Derek, couldn't make it because of work. My parents immediately rushed to his defense, explaining how important his job as a financial analyst was, all while shooting me looks that clearly said, "Unlike some people at this table." What she didn't tell them was that Derek had actually moved out 3 weeks earlier. I found out because I ran into him at the gym, and he was upset enough to tell me they were separating. He told me something that stuck with me. "Your sister cares more about your parents' approval than her own happiness." Apparently, she was working so many hours to be the superstar doctor her parents expected that their marriage had completely fallen apart. Derek said she'd missed anniversaries, birthdays, and even vacations they had already paid for, simply because she couldn't bear to disappoint her superiors or, more importantly, her parents. I didn't say anything to my family. It wasn't really my business, but I noticed the dark circles under her eyes at family gatherings, the way she obsessively checked her phone like she was waiting for bad news. The classic signs of someone whose perfect life was starting to crack. 3 months later, Elise showed up alone to our grandparents' anniversary party and announced the divorce was finalized. My parents immediately went into damage control mode. "These things happen to busy professionals," my mother said, giving me a look as if it were somehow my fault. My father added, "At least she accomplished something before this setback." I almost laughed out loud. Only my family could turn a divorce into another opportunity to attack me. That night, my grandfather pulled me aside and said, "You ever notice they never really ask how you're doing, Marshall? That's their loss. Keep building your life in silence. The ones who make the most noise burn out first." He had no idea how right he was. Over the next year, Elise started showing up to family events looking exhausted. Her hospital stories became less enthusiastic. She started chugging energy drinks during dinners. My parents either didn't notice or pretended not to. They were too busy using her achievements as weapons against me. "When did you get your last promotion at Target?" my mother asked during Christmas dinner. I just shrugged. "I'm doing okay." "Doing okay isn't the same as succeeding," my father chimed in. "Your sister works 80-hour weeks, saving lives." I saw Elise flinch slightly, but say nothing. I just nodded and changed the subject. What they didn't know was that I had just closed on my 4th property, a small apartment building that had nearly doubled my monthly income. But I stayed quiet. I'd learned long ago that nothing I did would ever matter to them. One day, I was working on my latest property, a 4-unit building that needed major plumbing repairs. I was under a sink fixing a leak when my phone rang. It was my father. "Marshall," he said, without even a hello. "We need you to switch your weekend for your grandmother's birthday. Elise has an important conference, so we're moving the party to the following weekend. Not, can you, but we need you to," as if my time had no value, as if I could just rearrange my schedule for Elise again. "Actually, I can't," I said, tightening a fitting. "I have work." "Target? Please. As if you're so important they can't survive a day without you. It isn't like you're running the company." I took a deep breath. "Not Target," I said. "Something else." "Something else? What?" He sounded genuinely confused, as if he couldn't imagine me doing anything other than scanning groceries. "Just projects," I said vaguely. "I'm already committed." He sighed, that signature disappointed dad sigh. "It's family, Marshall. I don't understand why you can't be more accommodating, like your sister." I almost told him right then. I almost said, "Actually, Dad, I'm renovating a property that's going to make me more money this month than you make in 3. But I held my tongue. The time wasn't right yet. Bianca came with me to Christmas Eve at my grandparents' house, the one family event I genuinely enjoyed. My grandmother Dorothy immediately adored her and whispered to me later, "That girl sees the real you. Don't let her go." My parents had no idea Bianca existed. I kept those two worlds completely separate. By this point, Elise was barely holding on. She'd switched hospitals twice, started complaining about the workload, the administrative nonsense, the insurance paperwork. My parents would immediately cut her off with, "But you're making a great living, honey. That's what matters." I saw her smile tighten every time. I almost felt bad for her. She started showing up to family gatherings in scrubs, saying she didn't have time to change. Her perfect makeup was gone. Her designer clothes had been replaced with whatever was comfortable. But my parents were so attached to the image of their successful doctor-daughter that they kept bragging about her to everyone. The breaking point came at my dad's 60th birthday dinner. My parents picked an expensive restaurant and spent the whole evening talking about the European cruise they were planning. When my dad opened his gifts, Elise gave him an envelope with first-class upgrades. "Only the best for you," she said, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Later, when she went to the restroom, my mother leaned over to me and said, "See what a thoughtful, successful daughter does. When are you ever going to contribute to this family?" I took a sip of water and said calmly, "Everyone contributes differently, I guess." My father scoffed. "Some more than others." My grandmother Dorothy overheard this and said sharply to my mother, "That boy hasn't asked you for a dime since he was 18. Maybe you should think about that before you start counting contributions." My parents just rolled their eyes, but I noticed Elise had returned and heard the whole thing. For the first time, I saw something like doubt cross her face. Later that night, I found her sitting alone on my parents' back porch, staring into space. I almost walked away. We weren't really close anymore, but something made me sit down next to her. "You okay?" I asked. She didn't look at me. "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" The question was so unexpected that I didn't know how to respond immediately. "Because sometimes," she continued, "I look around and wonder how I got here. When did I decide this is what I wanted?" "Didn't you always want to be a doctor?" I asked, genuinely curious. She shrugged. "I wanted to make Mom and Dad proud. Being a doctor was the clearest path to that." She finally looked at me. "You're the smart one, you know." I laughed. "I'm pretty sure that's not what our parents would say." "That's because they don't see it," she said. "You figured out early on that their approval isn't worth chasing. I'm just realizing it now, and I've already sacrificed everything." Before I could answer, my mother called us inside for cake. Elise put on her fake smile and went back to playing the part of the perfect daughter. But something had changed. I could feel it. A few nights later, my phone buzzed around midnight. It was Elise. I stared at the screen for a moment. We almost never talked unless someone needed something. But this time felt different. I answered. She was crying. Not just a few sniffles, but uncontrollable sobs. "Marshall, I've screwed everything up," she said through a broken voice. "I've really screwed it all up." This wasn't the first time she'd called me out of the blue. About 8 months earlier, she had called to ask if she could borrow $5,000 for what she called a temporary cash flow problem. I didn't ask any questions. I just sent her the money and said to pay me back when she could. She never did. "What's wrong?" I asked, sitting up in bed. Bianca stirred next to me, opening her eyes. "I lost my job," Elise whispered, as if saying it out loud made it real. 3 months ago. I was quiet for a moment. Why didn't you tell anyone? Are you kidding? Tell Mom and Dad that I failed? After all of this. Her voice faded. I thought I'd find something else quickly. I've been applying everywhere, but nothing's working, and I'm out of options. How have you been living until now? I asked, though I was already starting to put the pieces together. That's when she completely broke down. Between sobs, she admitted she had burned through all her savings, maxed out her credit cards, borrowed money from friends, and was now facing eviction from her luxury apartment. Her BMW had already been repossessed the month before. She'd been using Ubers to get to interviews and telling our parents she was having car trouble. Her voice got even smaller as she admitted the worst part. My parents have no idea, I stated. Worse, she said. They keep asking me for things. That's when she told me what had really been going on for the past few years. Every vacation my parents had taken, Elise paid for it. The renovations on their house? Elise. My dad's new car? Elise. The weekly dinners at expensive restaurants? Elise. They never said they couldn't afford it, she explained. They just expected it, like it was my duty since I was so successful. At first, I thought I was just being generous. But now you're broke. I finished for her. Yes, she whispered. And I have nowhere to go. I should have told her to figure it out on her own. After years of looking down on me, of participating in our parents' mockery, of treating me like I was less than, I had every reason to hang up. Instead, I said, I have a duplex over on Westfield. The smaller unit is empty. You can stay there while you get back on your feet. The truth was, I didn't just have that duplex. I owned it, and 4 other properties, too. But she didn't need to know that yet. There was a long silence before she finally asked, why would you help me? After everything. I thought for a moment. Because I'm not them. When I hung up, Bianca turned to me. Are you sure about this? No, I admitted. But it feels right. She smiled slightly. That's why I love you. You're nothing like they think you are. What I didn't tell her was that a small part of me was savoring the irony. The family disappointment coming to the rescue of the golden child. The minimum wage target cashier providing housing for the doctor. There was a certain poetic justice to it all. The next morning, I got up early and went to the duplex to get it ready. It was nothing fancy, a small 2-bedroom apartment with old but functional appliances. I'd been planning to renovate it next month before putting it back on the rental market, but it was clean and everything worked. I stocked the fridge with some basics, made sure the utilities were on, and left a spare key under the doormat. As I was checking the smoke detectors, I found myself thinking about how different my life could have been if I'd chased my parents' approval the way Elise had. I could have been the one calling her for help instead of the other way around. The thought sent a chill down my spine. Elise showed up the next day with 3 suitcases and red, puffy eyes. For someone who always looked perfect, she was unrecognizable. I gave her the keys and a quick rundown of the apartment. It isn't fancy, I warned her. Nothing like your condo. It's a roof, she said quietly. That's all I need right now. I didn't tell her that the property manager she'd be paying a reduced rent to was me. As far as she knew, I was just a contact who got her the apartment. I figured it was better that way. The first day, I saw her sitting on the small concrete patio, staring at her phone. I'd come by to fix a closet door that wasn't closing properly. Everything okay with the place? I asked. She looked up, startled. Yeah, it's fine. Just looking for work. I nodded and went on with the repair. After a few minutes of awkward silence, she spoke up again. Marshall, do you think you could look at my resume? I feel like it's missing something. I've applied to 20 places and only heard back from 2. It was surreal. My whole life, Elise had been the one with all the answers. And now she was asking me for advice. Sure, I said. Send it over. Later that night, I looked at her resume. On paper, it was impressive. Top medical school, prestigious residency, years at reputable hospitals. But it was also generic. There was nothing that made her stand out from thousands of other qualified doctors. I sent her back a marked-up version with suggestions, emphasizing specific achievements, quantifiable results, and unique skills. It was basic stuff I had taught myself, things she'd never had to think about. Her career had always been on a fast track until it derailed. This is really helpful, she texted me. Where did you learn all this? Some of us have to work for our opportunities, I simply replied. Bianca was skeptical at first. She's going to find out eventually, she said. Maybe, I admitted. But I'm not ready for that conversation yet. My parents found out Elise had moved within a few days. My mother called first, her voice dripping with fake concern. Marshall, honey, I heard your sister is staying in an apartment you found for her. That's thoughtful. No thank you. No acknowledgement, just surprised that I could be useful. Yeah, she needed a place, I replied simply. Well, your father and I think she should come live with us instead. She needs to be with family during this temporary setback. I almost laughed. Did you ask her what she wants? Well, maybe you should try that, I suggested before hanging up. My father called next, more direct. Marshall, your mother and I think Elise should be living with us. This situation is just temporary while she sorts out some work-related issues. Oh, what happened with her job? I asked innocently. There was a pause. She's between positions. It's very common in the medical field. Anyway, we have plenty of room here. Did she tell you she wants to stay with you? Another pause. Well, no, but we're her parents. Like I told Mom, maybe you should ask her what she wants. What I was starting to realize was that Elise hadn't told them the full story. They knew she had moved and was staying in a place I'd found for her, but they didn't know she was completely broke, jobless, and had been for months. A week later, I stopped by to fix a leaky faucet in her apartment. I could have called a plumber, but I wanted to check on her. She was on the phone in the kitchen, speaking in a hushed tone, but not hushed enough for me not to overhear. Mom, I can't ask him that, she was saying, her voice tense. I couldn't hear my mother's reply, but Elise's side of the conversation was enough. No, I don't know how much he makes. Yes, I know he's already helping me with the rent. No, I don't think he has savings like that. I froze in the hallway. They were seriously talking about hitting me up for money, after years of treating me like I was worthless. Mom, he's a cashier at Target, Elise whispered with irritation. He can't just. No, I understand you're struggling without. Yes, I know I used to help, but that was all I needed to hear. I didn't storm in. I didn't make a scene. I just went back to fixing the faucet. When she came out of the kitchen, she looked surprised to see me. How long have you been here? She asked, her voice slightly panicked. Long enough, I replied without looking up from the sink. If they send you to ask me for money, you're out. Is that clear? She didn't argue. She just nodded and left the room. That night, I told Bianca everything. She wasn't surprised. She said my parents had been using Elise for years, and now they were trying to shift the burden to me. The difference was, I saw it coming. I mentioned that they had no idea I could actually help them if I wanted to. My business had cleared a significant amount the previous month alone. Bianca just squeezed my hand and said that was exactly why I was winning. They didn't even know who I really was. A few days later, I saw Elise coming back from an interview. Before she went inside, she told me she'd made it clear to our parents that she would not be asking me for money. They weren't happy. She said they didn't understand why she'd rather stay in this so-called hovel than live with them. I asked her what she thought. She hesitated, looked around at the modest duplex, and then said she was finally starting to understand why I chose to do things my own way. About a month after Elise moved in, my grandparents called and invited me to dinner at their place. Bring Bianca, my grandmother said. And your sister will be here, too. There was something in her tone that made me wary. Who else? A pause. Your parents asked to join. I almost refused immediately, but my grandfather got on the phone. Marshall, I think you should come. Trust me. When Bianca and I arrived, everyone was already there. My parents looked tense. Elise looked miserable. My grandparents exchanged a look I couldn't read. Dinner started awkwardly. My parents tried to make conversation with Bianca, suddenly interested in her now that they understood she was my serious girlfriend. A bookstore. How quaint. My mother said, looking Bianca's outfit up and down as if mentally calculating its price. I imagine it's rewarding. They just let you read all day, or is it a real job? Bianca just smiled and said she loved books, completely unbothered. My father chuckled. As long as someone's making money, right? Then he turned to Bianca. You surely didn't expect to be dating a cashier at Target. You must really love charity work. They both laughed as if they'd just made a brilliant joke. So how long have you two been together? He asked. 2 years next month, Bianca replied. My parents blinked as if they'd just learned we were secretly married with 3 kids. My mother tilted her head. 2 years and still together. That's admirable. Not everyone has the patience for someone who's still finding their voice. Then came the questions about where we lived. I was vague. We have a place. But that wasn't enough. The East Side, my mother repeated when I gave a few more details. Well, it's nice that you're making do with what you have. I'm sure it's charming. You two must really be in love. My father snickered. Must be that handyman charm. He built her a few shelves and boom, true love. Bianca kept smiling, but I felt her hand tighten slightly under the table. After dinner, my father cleared his throat dramatically, as if he were about to make a speech. I knew whatever was coming wasn't going to be good. Marshall, we wanted to talk to you about something important, he began. As you know, family needs to stick together during difficult times. My mother added, your sister is going through a career transition, and it's put a temporary strain on all of us. I noticed they carefully avoided mentioning financial trouble or admitting Elise was unemployed. They were keeping up appearances. For years, Elise has been very generous with us, my father continued. She's helped us enjoy our retirement, do renovations, travel. And now it's your turn, my mother added, looking me straight in the eye. We've always been there for you, Marshall. We fed you, clothed you, sent you to school. I almost laughed. I had been financially independent since I was 18. I had paid for my own education. I had never asked them for a dime. What exactly are you asking for? I asked calmly. My parents exchanged a look. Well, my father said, we have some upcoming expenses. The house needs a new roof, and your mother's car is having issues. So you want me to pay for it? I clarified. My mother looked offended. We're not asking for a handout, Marshall. We're just saying that family supports each other. Elise always understood that. I glanced at my sister. She was staring at her plate. She wouldn't meet my eyes. How much? I asked simply. My father answered without flinching. About $20,000 would get us through the next few months. The room went silent. $20,000. From the Target cashier. I slowly put down my fork. And you think I have that kind of money? Not all at once, obviously, my mother said quickly. But Elise mentioned you do some property management on the side. You must have some savings. I looked at Elise, who finally met my gaze. She looked ashamed. I didn't tell them anything specific, she said quietly. They just kept asking. I nodded slowly, then turned back to my parents. So, let me get this straight. For years, you've mocked my job. You've called me a failure. You've compared me to Elise at every opportunity. You've belittled everything I've ever done. You've never taken an interest in my life. You didn't even know I had a girlfriend of 2 years. And now, you want me to give you money. This isn't fair, my dad started. My grandfather cut him off. Actually, I think it's perfectly fair. Everyone turned to him. My grandfather rarely intervened in family disputes. You and your wife have spent years treating Marshall like he's less than you, he continued. Dorothy and I have seen it. We've told you time and again, but you never listened. My grandmother chimed in. You've looked down on his work, his choices, his path. And now you want his help. After all that. And that's when my father went too far. Look, Marshall, he said, his voice filled with contempt disguised as concern. It isn't like you're married or raising a family or building a real career. You're almost 30, still punching a clock at Target and playing handyman on the weekends. Bianca is clearly a nice girl, but honestly, I don't get what she sees in a man with no real direction. At some point, you need to grow up and do something that actually matters. That's when I decided it was over. I had kept my life a secret for years, protecting myself from their judgment, but maybe it was time they understood exactly who they'd been looking down on all this time. I didn't flinch. I just looked at him. You want to know something funny, Dad? The duplex where Elise is living? I don't manage it. I own it. My mother's eyebrows shot up. In fact, I continued, I own 5 properties now. That little side hustle you were talking about has been my real focus for years. Target is just a job I do a few days a week for the insurance and to keep expectations low. My father's mouth literally hung open. Last month, after expenses, my properties generated a little over $100,000, I said. Not counting the equity I'm building. My portfolio is worth several $1,000,000 now. With loans, of course, but still. The look on their faces was worth almost every year of their contempt. You know that old car you always make fun of? I keep it because it's reliable and paid off. I could buy a new car in cash tomorrow if I wanted to. I just don't care about flashy things like you do. My mother was stammering now. But you never told us anything. Why would you hide this from us? Because nothing I ever did was good enough for you, I said calmly. So I stopped trying to prove myself. I built my life in silence, on my own terms. Then I added, turning to my grandparents, and there's something else you don't know. I've been paying Clarence and Dorothy's rent for the past year, and I cover their out-of-pocket medical costs. My parents' heads whipped toward my grandparents, who were smiling gently. Marshall insisted, my grandmother said. We told him it wasn't necessary, but he wouldn't hear of it. And there's one more thing, my grandfather added. Last month, we named Marshall the trustee of our estate. If my parents looked shocked before, now they were completely stunned. What does that mean? My father demanded. It means, my grandfather said calmly, that Marshall makes the financial decisions for us now. And whatever is left when we're gone will go where he decides is fair. That's absurd, my father yelled, slamming his hand on the table. We're your children. And Marshall is our grandson, the one who actually takes the time to look after us, my grandmother replied. When was the last time you came to see us without asking for something, Jonathan? My mother turned to me, her face unreadable. You hid all of this from us? Why? I looked her straight in the eye. Why? So I could tell you, and you could ask me for money sooner? So you could pretend to be proud of me only after I became financially successful? I shook my head. No thanks. Then I said the words I'd been holding back for years. It's funny. You always said I'd never amount to anything in this family. And now, I'm the one signing the checks. My father shot up from his chair. This is ridiculous. You've turned my own parents against me. No, my grandmother said firmly. Your behavior did that all on its own. My mother turned to Elise, expecting her to defend them. But my sister just looked at them and said quietly, They used me too, Mom. My father's face turned red. Used you? We supported you. We were proud of you. You paraded me around like a trophy, Elise interrupted. Then you expected me to fund your lifestyle because I was doing well. You never once asked if I was happy. My father started ranting about ungrateful children while my mother dabbed at her eyes with a napkin, playing the victim. Neither of them was actually listening. I think we're done here, I said, standing up. I looked at my grandparents. Thank you for dinner. As Bianca and I headed for the door, my father yelled after me. That's it? You're just going to walk out when your family needs you? I turned back, my hand on the doorknob. That's exactly what you taught me to do. After that dinner, I cut all contact. I blocked their numbers, their emails, everything. No more guilt trips, no more fake messages. Bianca and I even changed the locks and installed cameras. With them, you never know. Elise stayed at the duplex for a while longer and then finally found a job at the community clinic she'd told me about. She doesn't make nearly as much money, but she told me it's the first time she's felt like she's doing something that matters to her, not for the applause. We talk now, not every day, but enough. Our relationship has completely changed. She listens to me, asks for my advice, and respects what I've built. We're not best friends, but there's peace, finally. As for my parents, after I cut them off, they tried to go through Elise to mediate. She refused immediately. She told them flat out that I had moved on. My dad apparently threw a fit when he learned I had transferred the power of attorney to a lawyer, making my grandparents' inheritance completely out of his reach. They're not doing well financially. Without Elise to fund everything, they're starting to find out what living within their means actually feels like. They had to cancel the cruise, sell the car. There are even rumors they're looking into a reverse mortgage. But honestly, it's not my problem anymore. The last message I got from them was a group email with the subject line, Family is forever. 2 paragraphs of emotional manipulation, half-hearted apologies, and one final, classy jab. We raised you better than that. I didn't reply. I just archived it and poured myself a coffee in my workshop, looking over the blueprints for my next property. It's funny how different success looks when no one is telling you what it's supposed to look like. Oh, and the family achievement wall. My grandparents replaced half the pictures. Now, there's a photo of Elise in her new scrubs and a photo of me in front of my first building with a sold sign. My grandfather framed it himself. I guess if there's a moral to this story, it's this. Talk down to the quiet ones for long enough, and they'll eventually stop playing by your rules. They'll build their own scoreboard. Peace out, Marshall, your friendly neighborhood disappointment, who also just cleared 6 figures in monthly income. But what do I know? I still drive a Civic. Comment. I hope this story reminds you that your worth is never defined by someone else's opinion. Setting boundaries is not about shutting people out, but about protecting your own peace. True kindness comes from a place of strength, not from a need for approval. You have the right to build a life that feels authentic to you, even if no one else understands it at first. Healing often begins the moment we decide our own well-being is a priority. Sometimes, the most powerful move you can make is to quietly walk away from the noise and choose tranquility. Remember to be the person who shows up for yourself, especially when no one else does. The right people will celebrate your growth, not feel threatened by it. Take care of yourself and build your own definition of success. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.